Welcome back, you unshakable, magnificent force of nature. Take a deep breath and settle in, because what I'm about to tell you is going to turn the last 5 years of your life upside down. The silence you thought would never break just did, and the truth that's come out is heavier, uglier, and more revealing than anyone ever expected. Someone finally cracked under the weight of their guilt. Someone from that trusted circle, that smiling group of familiar faces who swore they had your back, came forward and confessed everything they'd been hiding. Every meeting, every whisper, every carefully crafted lie that was spoken when you weren't around. It's all out now, spilled like poison they can't scoop back into the cup. And you deserve to know exactly what they did, and how deep it went. They thought they'd buried it forever. They thought the secrets they shared would stay sealed inside late-night calls and group chats named things you'd never suspect. They believed they were clever, calculated, and untouchable, weaving lies together like a safety net to protect themselves from being exposed. But here's what people like that never understand. When you build your power on deceit, rot starts growing from the inside. Eventually, someone's conscience decays. Eventually, the guilt festers so badly it burns through silence. And that's exactly what happened. One of them couldn't carry the burden anymore. They couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe under the weight of their own participation. So they confessed, in painful, vivid detail, enough to rewrite everything you thought you knew about who was truly standing beside you all those years. It all started in rooms you never stepped into, rooms where your name wasn't spoken out of love, but dissected like a problem to be solved. They didn't gossip. They strategized. They treated your life like a project, your emotions like data, and your pain like a performance to critique. Every move you made was discussed, analyzed, broken down into patterns and predictions. They studied your habits, your posts, your tone, your timing. They examined you like scientists obsessed with their subject. Those weren't conversations born of care. They were tactical sessions built to control how the world saw you. Together, they decided what version of you should exist publicly, which parts of you to distort, which traits to amplify, until people questioned your sanity before you even spoke a word. And the one who finally broke? They described those meetings in haunting detail. Someone would always begin with fake concern. "I'm worried about them," or "they seem off lately." But it was all part of the script. Every word was designed to make you seem unbalanced, too emotional, too unpredictable, too much. They rehearsed responses to things you hadn't even said yet, wrote counter-narratives to events that hadn't even happened. They built an entire false version of you and sold it as the truth. And all the while, they smiled to your face. They kept laughing at your jokes, replying to your messages, showing up like nothing had changed. They perfected the art of duality, one version of themselves for you, another for the meetings. They practiced it, literally practiced it. The confessor admitted that before seeing you, they'd remind each other to stay normal, to hide the guilt, to keep their masks in place. They became professionals at deception, experts at smiling while sharpening the knife they planned to use on your back. But that was only the beginning. What came next was systematic. They didn't just talk. They executed a campaign. They had talking points, actual lines to repeat when others asked about you, ensuring everyone in your circle heard the same distorted version of the truth. It wasn't rumor. It was organized manipulation. One person played the sympathetic voice, pretending to care while subtly painting you as unstable. Another collected evidence, screenshots, messages, moments, to back up their lies. Someone else was tasked with checking in on you, not from concern, but to gather fresh information to report back. And then there was the amplifier, whose job was to make sure the story spread, reaching people who barely knew you so they'd accept the narrative without question. The confessor said they were the one who stayed closest to you, the one who listened when you cried, who told you they understood, who hugged you when you were breaking, only to relay your pain to the group moments later, twisting your vulnerability into proof of your instability. They said it became disturbingly easy. The group made it feel justified, like betraying you was a noble act, like manipulation was protection. They shared screenshots, hundreds of them, of group chats where your name appeared again and again, alongside laughter, mockery, and casual cruelty. They joked about your struggles. They celebrated when people drifted away from you. They monitored your life like spectators at a show, treating your humanity as entertainment. But what's most chilling is the structure they built around your reactions. They had a system for it, what they called provocation protocols. They'd deliberately do things to unsettle you, then feign innocence when you reacted, cancel plans, exclude you from events, feed you half-truths, say things designed to trigger emotion, then stand back and whisper, "See, that's what we mean." They built traps where no response from you could be right. If you got quiet, you were cold. If you spoke up, you were dramatic. If you smiled, it was fake. They made sure you could never win in the story they were telling. And through all of this, you were just living, trusting, trying, believing that people meant well. You had no idea that every kindness was being measured, every reaction was being recorded, every conversation was being dissected in real time. You didn't lose friends. You were infiltrated. You weren't being paranoid. They were being methodical. And now that the truth is out, now that one of them finally let the mask slip, the whole illusion is collapsing. Everything you thought was coincidence, every moment that didn't feel quite right, it wasn't in your head. It was planned. It was coordinated. And it's finally, gloriously unraveling. You could have gotten engaged, and they'd still find a way to twist it into a performance, labeling you as desperate for attention, as if happiness in your own life was somehow an insult to theirs. You could have told a harmless joke, and they'd whisper that you were being inappropriate, too much, out of line. You could have chosen silence, kept your head down, and they'd call you cold, withdrawn, antisocial. You could have shown vulnerability, and they'd brand you unstable or manipulative. The truth is, there was never a version of you that would satisfy them, because acceptance was never on the table. What they wanted wasn't understanding. It was validation of the story they had already written about you. They weren't seeking truth. They were hunting for proof to reinforce the lie. And every time you showed up, every time you existed in your own skin, they dissected you afterward, holding post-event evaluations like some grotesque tribunal. They'd gather to analyze your tone, your body language, your smallest expressions, searching for anything that could serve as confirmation that you were exactly who they said you were. Every move you made was documented, not because it mattered to them as people, but because it mattered to them as evidence. Then came the part that truly exposes the depth of their cruelty, what they referred to as isolation engineering. It wasn't enough for them to twist perceptions. They wanted to dismantle your entire support system piece by piece. They started subtly, with whispered doubts and carefully worded concerns. I think they've changed lately. I'm worried they're not okay. They've been acting differently, haven't they? Phrases that sounded compassionate on the surface, but were designed to poison minds and fracture connections. They didn't attack outright. They planted seeds, and then they watered them patiently. Over time, those small doubts grew into distance. Friends started withdrawing, not because of anything you did, but because of what they were told. Every time someone tried to defend you, the group would swoop in with fake sympathy. I know, I love them too, but you don't know what goes on behind the scenes. The confessor admitted that they even scheduled check-ins with mutual acquaintances after you spent time together, pretending to care about your well-being when, in truth, they were gathering intelligence. They wanted to make sure no counter-narrative, No alternate version of the truth could survive. They built an echo chamber so tight that every voice except yours repeated the same distorted script. You were systematically surrounded by people who, unknowingly or not, had been conditioned to doubt you. And it was so carefully orchestrated that by the time you realized you were standing alone, the damage had already been done. You weren't abandoned by accident. You were isolated by design. The confessor's account revealed another layer that's even more disturbing. Some of them studied psychological manipulation on purpose. They looked up articles, forums, and guides about gaslighting, projection, triangulation, and mirroring. They learned how to destabilize someone's sense of reality, and then practiced it on you like it was a social experiment. They would deny things they had clearly said, forcing you to question your memory and judgment. They would pit people against each other, while posing as the peacemaker, manipulating both sides until everyone came to them for clarity. They would accuse you of doing the exact things they were guilty of, projecting their guilt onto you so completely that you began to internalize it. It's already in motion. The truth is self-sustaining, and it's dismantling them one revelation at a time. All you have to do is keep living, keep breathing, keep being exactly who they tried so hard to erase. Because your existence, your peace, your joy, is the most powerful form of retribution there is. They spent years trying to destroy you, and ended up destroying themselves. They invested all their time and energy into breaking someone who never belonged to their small, shallow world. While they were holding secret meetings about you, you were evolving in silence. While they were obsessing over your downfall, you were building a version of yourself they could never touch. While they were feeding each other lies, you were feeding your own spirit, preparing to rise in ways they'd never see coming. And that's the real reason they feared you. Not because of what you did, but because of what you are. You are proof that authenticity survives even the dirtiest campaigns. You are the reminder that truth doesn't die in darkness. It waits. You are the reflection that forces people to see what they've lost in themselves. You didn't just survive their manipulation. You transcended it. And now, with the truth finally standing in the open, you can walk away knowing one unshakable fact. They never broke you. They never even came close. Because even when they threw everything they had at you, every rumor, every false smile, every carefully timed betrayal, you still stood. You still woke up, still loved, still laughed, still created. They underestimated the kind of strength that doesn't roar but endures, that doesn't seek vengeance but outlives every lie told in its name. They thought pain would paralyze you. Instead, it refined you. They thought isolation would silence you. Instead, it sharpened your vision. You became something they could never replicate, a living contradiction to every falsehood they crafted. The version of you they invented was fragile, unstable, easy to shatter. But the real you became indestructible in your quiet resilience, steady in your truth, glowing with the calm fury of someone who no longer needs to prove anything. And now, as the dust begins to settle, the landscape looks different. The same people who once exchanged laughter at your expense are now avoiding eye contact. The same group that claimed to protect others from you is now trying to protect themselves from exposure. They whisper apologies cloaked in excuses, trying to frame their cruelty as confusion, their manipulation as misunderstanding. But you see it clearly now, how they crumble under the weight of their own narratives when stripped of power. You see how quickly their loyalty to each other disintegrates when self-preservation takes over. The alliances that were built on your destruction are collapsing, one by one, as they turn on each other to escape accountability. It's poetic in its own way. Their empire of deceit reduced to dust by the same instability they once accused you of having. But don't mistake this reckoning as your revenge. This isn't about vengeance. It's about restoration. The confession didn't come to fuel your anger. It came to validate your reality. Every instinct you doubted, every moment you second-guessed, every tear you held back because you were told you were imagining things, all of it finds resolution here. You finally have the missing pieces. You finally have context for the confusion. You finally have proof that your pain wasn't self-inflicted. It was engineered. And with that clarity comes freedom. Freedom from the need to explain. Freedom from the weight of defending your own name. Freedom from carrying the ghosts of people who no longer deserve to walk beside you. Because healing isn't about pretending it never happened. It's about reclaiming the version of yourself that existed before their poison touched you, and then evolving beyond even that. You are no longer who you were before they broke your trust, but you're also no longer defined by what they did. You've outgrown the battlefield. You've stepped out of the ruins and built something stronger in its place. Because what survived all of this wasn't just you. It was everything they tried to erase. Your integrity, your compassion, your heart, your light. They couldn't twist it, couldn't kill it, couldn't control it. It endured, it adapted, it evolved. You are walking proof that no matter how coordinated the deception, no matter how heavy the betrayal, no matter how long the darkness lasts, truth always finds its way home. And now it has. Through you. So lift your chin, breathe in deeply, and step forward with calm defiance. The storm has passed, and you're still standing, untouched at your core. They never broke you. They only revealed how unbreakable you've been all along. Welcome back. The world missed you. The story they tried to steal is once again yours to tell. They knew exactly what they were doing, and that's what makes it so dark. This wasn't ignorance. This was premeditated cruelty disguised as concern. And yet, the question that haunts every story like this remains: why? Why would anyone invest so much time, energy, and malice into breaking another person down? The confessor said it started with envy, and not the casual, fleeting kind, but a deep, corrosive jealousy that eats away at a person from the inside. You had something they didn't, something intangible but powerful. Maybe it was your confidence, your authenticity, your ability to be real in a world that rewards masks. Maybe it was your peace, your independence, your refusal to beg for acceptance. Whatever it was, it made them feel small by comparison, and instead of facing that feeling, they turned it outward. They wanted to destroy the reflection that reminded them of what they lacked. But it didn't stop at envy. It evolved into something more insidious, a shared obsession, a group identity built around your undoing. The confessor admitted that their dynamic became addictive, a kind of emotional blood sport that bonded them together. You were their common enemy, and that gave them unity. They built entire friendships around the shared mission of dissecting and destroying you. Inside jokes formed around your name. Celebrations erupted when their manipulation succeeded. Every time someone in your circle distanced themselves, they treated it like a victory. They called it progress. They reinforced each other's worst impulses, turning malice into group entertainment. You became the glue that held their little empire of insecurity together. As time went on, their lies started to harden into belief. They'd told the same story so many times, repeated it in so many rooms, that they began to believe it themselves. They rewrote history in real time, reshaping memories and conversations until they couldn't tell the difference between fiction and truth. In their twisted reality, they became the heroes, protectors of others from the supposed chaos of you. They convinced themselves that their betrayal was moral, that their cruelty was justified, that they were victims of your supposed volatility. The confessor said it was frightening to watch how easily they convinced themselves of their own innocence. They had built a religion around your demonization, a cult with one sacred rule: you were the problem, and anything done to you was righteous. And yet, even within that delusion, moments of doubt flickered. The confessor described nights when someone would voice hesitation. Maybe we're being too harsh. Maybe this isn't right. But those moments never lasted. The group would smother any spark of conscience under the weight of collective justification. They'd remind each other of what you'd done, reinforcing the mythology until the guilt disappeared. They created a moral vacuum where compassion was treason, and questioning the narrative was an act of disloyalty. Their unity depended on your destruction, and they couldn't afford cracks in the foundation. So they closed ranks, tighter and tighter, until they couldn't even see how monstrous they'd become. But here's where everything shifts. This confession doesn't just expose them, it frees you. Every sleepless night where you replayed conversations, wondering if you were imagining things. Every moment when your intuition screamed that something was off, but you silenced it because you didn't want to seem paranoid. Every time you questioned your memory, your worth, your reality. It all makes perfect sense now. You weren't crazy. You weren't overreacting. You were detecting patterns they were desperate to hide. Your instincts were sharper than their manipulation, and that's why they worked so hard to destroy your confidence. Because deep down, they knew you saw them for who they really were. And now, that truth has surfaced in the most undeniable way possible. A confession. Evidence. Screenshots. Details too specific to be denied. Everything they thought they buried is clawing its way into the light. And now, they're panicking. The same people who once dictated the narrative are scrambling to rewrite it again, this time to protect themselves. They're calling people, sending messages, trying to get ahead of the story. Suddenly they care deeply about how they'll be perceived. Suddenly they're the ones afraid of being misunderstood, misrepresented, talked about. They're feeling a fraction of what they made you endure. And the irony is breathtaking. The paranoia, the fear, the desperate need to control the narrative. It's all theirs now. But here's your victory. You don't have to lift a finger. You don't need revenge. You don't need exposure, confrontation, or validation. The truth is already doing the work for you. It's spreading through the same social veins they once used to poison your name, turning their empire of lies into rubble. You don't need to chase justice.